I show 1 minute. So quiet.
That's why I said elevator music.
Thank you. I show it at 6 o'clock.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I will call the meeting to order of the Western Water Regular Board Meeting of June 4th, 2025 at 6 p.m. May we have roll call, please, Ms. Ford?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Director Gardner.
I am present.
Director Torres. Here. Director Dinstedt.
Present?
Director Risby.
Good evening, I'm here.
Good evening, President Roten.
And I also am here.
Thank you. President Roten, you do have a quorum tonight.
Thank you. And we will now invite Kathy Rinsler, Administrative Assistant from Water Resources Department, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. If everybody could please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kathy. Can you tell us a little bit about
No.
yourself?
I'm the administrative assistant to our water resources and GIS team, and I have had the pleasure of being with, working with Western for 5 years.
Oh, very good. All right,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you for being here for the evening meeting. All right, we'll move into general public comments. Item 4. Ms. Ford, do we have any?
At this time, I have received no requests to speak under general comments. And I've received no written general comment.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anyone have a question or wanting to pull anything off of consent? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We do. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
We do.
May we have roll call vote, please?
Director Gardner.
Aye.
Director Torres.
Yes.
Director Dinstedt.
Aye.
Director Risby.
Aye.
President Roten.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we will move on to item 6. Mr. Miller, are there any items to be added to the
Tammy,
agenda?
I just see a hand up
Oh.
on Zoom.
Uh-oh.
I see Kurt Schwabe. Mr. Schwabe, did you wish to make a public comment? Hi. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself. There we go.
Yes, sorry about that.
That's
It's
all
a
right.
rookie mistake. I apologize.
No worries.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Please go ahead and begin your comment.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the board for holding this meeting and for all the good work that you're doing. My name is Kurt Schwabe. I'm a professor of environmental economics and policy in the School of Public Policy at UC Riverside. My research area focuses mostly on water policy, and I've done a lot of research for local agencies, regional agencies on water pricing and water affordability. And I'd just like to make just one simple comment about what I see regarding your water rates, given that I noticed that there would be discussions about water rate changes today. A colleague of mine, Professor Mehdi Namadi, and myself have looked at water affordability over most of the retailers within metropolitan service area. And so when we think about water affordability, the metric that's widely used by the state is the fraction of your income that you spend on water. And so the state has determined a threshold for water affordability of 1.5. And just to unpack that briefly, so if more than 1.5% of your income goes towards your expenditures on water, the state would classify that as a reason to be unaffordable, or it's not really binary and like that, but it's a concern about water becoming unaffordable and above the threshold that they set. So the other important part there is that when they talk about the water expenditures, they're talking about water expenditures on what they consider a indoor use or reasonable human right to water, which is around 50 gallons per capita per day within a household. And so sometimes we think about this being about 6 CCFs and cubic 100 feet per month. And so to get to my point here is that we've looked at 109 of the 130 retail agencies that for water affordability within Metropolitan's retail agencies. And we find that Western's for 2024, your water affordability ratio is 0.4. So 0.4% of your income, the average income within your district, goes towards water. Now remember, the state's threshold is 1.5. So in that sense, it seems that whatever you're doing, it seems to be working pretty well in terms of just using an affordability metric to measure your success. There are some agencies that are above the threshold. And out of the 109 that we looked at, you are the 20th lowest. And so there are, 85 agencies approximately that have less affordable water with the way the state measures it than you do. Anyways, I just wanted to put that out there. I know water costs are going up and such, and that's inevitable with water quality issues. I'm running out of time, so I'll just put that out there. I think to some extent you guys are doing a great job, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yep.
President Roten and General Manager Miller. We did open up the public comment period for Dr. Schwabe, and since that time, even though we have passed the public comment time, I've had 2 requests to speak. Should we go ahead and take those public comments, general comments, or do you want to move forward?
I would recommend that we would do that. We open it up for one person, not knowing what his comments were going to be involved. We plan to take comments on the rate hearing at that time, but since we've opened it up, I would recommend that we allow the second commenter to make comments also. I don't know if they're in to the rate hearing or if they're in general.
Thank you for clarification. At this time, I'd like to call DeForest Barnett.
Hey, thank you guys for making that exception. I'll make this pretty quick. So I'm DeForest Barnett from the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice. First of all, I wanted to thank the people from Western Water District for meeting with us a little while ago and discussing these rate hikes. And I do know that there have been some concerted efforts to reach out to the community, but we would like to ask you guys to consider a pause on these rate hikes for a couple of reasons. One, despite the fact that there have been some concerted efforts to reach out to the public, we've engaged with a lot of your customers, and pretty much all of them have said that they only learned about the water rate hikes through the CCA-EJ, so it seems pretty obvious that it's not reaching a lot of customers, this information. And, also just a pause to, possibly look for any other funding avenues before going directly towards, raising hikes on the community would be just really fantastic. I know there's a little table that basically shows, how much people will pay in dollar amounts as a percentage, but I think a lot of people are going to see higher rate hikes than that. And as you guys know, we've got a lot of people on a very tight budget. So we would like to ask you guys to consider pausing those hikes, to consider other funding streams, and to also just consider a bit more community outreach to make sure that your customers are truly aware of this rate hike. But, we do thank you guys for meeting with us and for your efforts so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I see no other requests to speak on Zoom. I do have one individual in the audience, Miss Callie. And Ms. Callie, this will be on your general comment.
I was hoping for 5 minutes, but
Unfortunately, we have to limit it to 3 minutes
That's
per
too
person in order
bad.
to accommodate everyone who wishes to speak.
especially since I found out we had another increase in January of this year, and they're considering another second one this June. Okay, I'd like to address the board and its stewardship. I appreciate that, and I want Western Water to succeed, but I have concerns. I was here at another meeting, and I went home with more concerns than feeling good about it. So that's why I'm back, both with the rate hike and also the smart meters. I feel like the consumers need to be part of giving permission for that to be put on their property. And one of the justifications for raising the rates was that Edison had not only a rate increase last year, but they were going to compound it this year with a larger rate increase. And with that, they were saying they needed this extra money as part of the reasoning. And you have these meters, these smart meters that are 24/7 running on electricity. And I feel not only the EMF, health harmful type of problems you might get, especially accumulative through the neighborhood, but it's also monitoring. That's where you need to have the resident's approval. But the meter, the mechanical meter, is a device where it works with the water pushing through it. You don't need to have electricity. And now we have it along with EMFs and monitoring. So, and I think it's a cost to the district. And I just want to put a moratorium on that till maybe the board would consider talking with the consumers at a meeting where it's just us, where we can have a one-on-one talk and not 3 minutes, and really have concerns met. That I think this is a health issue and also a cost to the district. So, and I don't like to see our meters taken out and scrapped for only pennies. And if it comes to a point where they have to reinstall the mechanical meters, then you have that cost also. So, and let's see. Also, I just thought that the employees, there was 171 employees, I thought. And I want to say, I'm very impressed with like water quality, your servicemen, very professional. So this isn't to complain about things, it's just to make it better and address concerns. But it seemed like when I asked about a concern, it was which superintendent? And I go, what do you mean which superintendent? There should only be one superintendent. And they go, oh no, we have many superintendents. So I go
Ms.
on the
Callie,
website.
thank you for your comment.
and
Your 3 minutes are up.
I couldn't find an organizational chart. And I think we should have an organizational chart.
Thank you, Ms. Callie.
Thank you.
At this time, I have no further comment requests.
All right.
We have, just to reiterate, we did go through the consent calendar. I had a motion by Director Dinstedt, a second by Director Rizvi, and the motion called for vote at 5-0.
Okay. And Mr. Miller, I believe you stated there were no items to add to the agenda.
There's no items to add tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So we will move on to Section 7, the action agenda. Item A, conduct a public hearing and consider adoption of Resolution 3352, establishing rates and charges for retail water service, and Resolution 3353, establishing rates and charges for retail sewer service. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, thank you, President Roten. The process we'll go through is to first do a presentation on the proposal, but I'll turn it back to you so you can kind of kick off the hearing process, and then we'll take it back over for the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. This is the time and place for the public hearing on proposed resolution 3352, authorizing rate adjustments for the water service charges, and proposed Resolution 3353, authorizing rate adjustments for the sewer service charges. I will now ask staff to present the findings of the cost of service studies, which supports the need for the proposed rates and charges described in the resolutions. And now I'll give it back to you.
All right, thank you. So we'll kind of share this presentation amongst staff. I thought I might open it by kind of summarizing the path to get here. This has been a long path. We've put a lot into this as a staff and as a board, and I think it's fair to kind of share the amount of effort and planning. This marks the culmination of about 18 months of effort to get to this hearing tonight. We have tried our best to make this a very transparent, thorough, encompassing process. You'll hear from Sarah later in the presentation about how much outreach we did and how we talked to customers. Very focused on the community, and these rates are based not just on today's needs, but I'm really committed to making sure that this agency is protecting the long-term water needs of this community, and that's all part of the rates. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a timeline, we first started talking about this 2 years ago as to what the schedule would be. Back in 2023, in September, we started preparing our budget that was approved last June. In that budget process from September until June, we developed all the detailed numbers of our required expenditures for a 2-year period. Within that budget, we also told the board that the revenue requirements to support this budget that this board approved would be about 8%. And so that was the information at the time. In June, about the same time, we started our cost of service study. For the public members that are here, the cost of service study is a requirement that you generate a study that looks at all of your costs, all of your revenue streams, where you're going to spend the money. And that's a requirement because Proposition 218, a statute in the state of California, says that you can only charge the true cost of serving water to the customers. So we have to prove that. And we do that through the cost of service study. So that started in June, literally a year ago. And then December of 2024, we started our outreach campaign. So we've spent the last 6 months really going out and talking to the board, other communities, groups, our community leaders, homeowners associations, and obviously 2 workshops with the board, and then talking through with the board at committee members, and the board also joining us at some of these community meetings so they could hear what the community and the public has said about the rates and the process. Board workshops in March. We set this hearing in April. We continued significant outreach, and we're finally to the hearing date here in June. So that's just kind of a setting for the process to get here. The other thing I'd like to add is, my strategy in developing this rate proposal and the cost of service is to bring forward absolutely the most reasonable, fair cost proposal at the lowest cost that we could generate. A lot of agencies come into this process in an environment like they're willing to negotiate. We didn't want this to be a negotiation. We brought you our best right off the bat. We've trimmed from that 8% that we told you at budget time. We were able to lower that number. A lot of hard work went into that. And so, we didn't just throw a proposal out there as a negotiating tool. It's our I don't want to say it's our final and best, but it is our best offer. So with that, let me get rolling on what we're going to present tonight. So we've trimmed down the presentation. The board has seen a lot of slides on this. The workshops were very long and very detailed, so we're going to skip some of the detail. We'll certainly go over the detail if there's questions from the board, but I didn't think that was necessary at this time. So we're going to talk about our cost drivers, the bill impacts, our cost management efforts, the outreach program, and then we'll take questions from the board, then we'll turn it over for public comment, and then we'll take a break, and then we will come back for consideration by the board. Next slide. So I think, that maybe this is a little bit redundant for the board. We want to have an understanding of the proposed rates. We've talked a lot to the board about the potential impacts of the rates on the customers. We're very happy to finally get to this public comment period and the hearing. So the board can ask questions, the public can hear the presentation, they can hear the questions of the board, they can make their comments to the board before the board deliberates and considers adoption of the rates. Next slide. So as a water agency, I think it's important, again, to remind everyone that we're a public agency. Unlike private companies, we exist solely for water and sewer service for our community. Service is at the heart of our mission. Everything we do is on the backs of our customers, and everything the customers pay us goes back into serving our customers, and that's really important to us. Next slide. So let's talk about the needs and what's driving this. Go ahead, next slide. So to consider the rates, we have a lot of analysis to do. We have to think about how costs are increasing. We bring in experts to help us with that. We don't want to be, kind of in our own little cocoon thinking about that. So we bring in industry experts, and they do the cost of service study. They're not doing that in a vacuum. They're doing that with Rick and our finance team and our executive management team to make sure that they fully understand how Western operates, where we get our water, how we treat our water, how we serve our water, how we collect sewage, how we transport sewage, how we treat sewage, and how we discharge it. Very important that the experts that we bring in understand that. That's not an easy process. If you look at the cost of service study, it's 2 inches thick. There's a lot to it. It's very, very detailed. The consultants then work very closely with our staff as they finalize that document, because there's assumptions that we make to smooth out the rates. And in the past, to our board, that's been a very important element, that we don't have rates that are fluctuating all over the place. We want to have a steady rate program over a 4-year period so our customers can predict what their costs are going to be for water. And so that's what we've done today. So there's a lot of work that goes in with the rate consultants to make sure that we can kind of smooth out those rates and keep those rates as low as possible. And then, obviously, we've reviewed that with the board. Next slide. To talk a little bit about the importance of what we do, we have a big service area. We provide water to over 1 million people. We take this job very, very seriously. We serve 25 billion gallons of water every year. We're trusted with $1.2 billion in assets. That's building them, operating them, fixing them, repairing them, and replacing them. It takes a huge amount of effort to do that. A lot of capital projects, a lot of operational expertise to maintain it and make sure it's operating all the time. We talk with the board a lot about our water supply. And, we look at a 60-40 split of imported water to local water. And that's really important to us. When I got here to Western, we were really 100% imported water. We've made an amazing transformation to being 40%. And actually, with the implementation of a couple more projects that are being completed right now, we're going to be at a 50-50 split very shortly here. That's really good news for the cost of water to our customers. And so if we go to the next slide, I can highlight that a little bit more. But you've all seen this slide. Where your water comes from is really important to the costs. I always say where you sit, where your residence is, where your business is really important to your cost of water. People in the public think that everyone kind of shares the same water supply costs. That's not close to the truth. In reality, there's agencies that have 100% groundwater that's right underneath their feet, very easy to produce, put into their system. Some groundwater doesn't even need to be treated. It's very high quality. Some agencies like ours were founded just to import water. We had no groundwater. So if you're within our service area, we were formed to import water. The water we import is through Metropolitan. It comes from Lake Oroville, hundreds of miles away. Every drop of water, 60% of the drops of water is coming out of Lake Oroville, through the Delta in Sacramento, down through the State Water Project, through the Central Valley, over the mountains, treated up here at the Mills Treatment Plant, and then put into our distribution system. Our rates have to cover not just the drops of water that we're buying, but the maintenance of that entire system and the cost to deliver water through that entire system. So it's costly, and it's a very intricate, detailed, expensive system to operate. We do have 40% local water, which is great, but as I've talked to you before, our groundwater is not under our feet because we're kind of up on a rock. And so there isn't groundwater. So the groundwater that we have, we're actually making deals with other entities that sit over that groundwater to transfer water back and forth. So our groundwater, it's less expensive than imported water, but it's more expensive than a lot of agencies are paying for groundwater that they're sitting on top of. The other major water supply to Southern California is Lake Mead through the Colorado River Aqueduct. We utilize some of that water for our non-potable purposes, but not really for our drinking water purposes. So we're predominantly a state water project through Lake Oroville. 40% of the water is coming from local sources. Very important into what our rates are. Next slide. All right, cost drivers. I'm going to turn over to Rick Aragon, our CFO, so he can talk to you about the cost drivers.
Thanks, Greg. Next slide, please. So the need for the rate adjustments really comes from the district having to face the difficult reality many of us are having to face, which is really coming from the primary factor that the cost of everything is going up. And we'll get into more detail on that on the next slide. But we have a variety of types of costs to run the service to get water to our customers, everything from labor to the energy it takes to pump. Even things like chemicals and contractors to do all of this. And we've seen cost increases on all of that. As Craig mentioned, one of the largest pieces of our budget, it comes with the cost to buy the water that we're importing. And so that's over 50% of our budget. And we're seeing above average increases, above inflationary increases on the cost of imported water. And then lastly, new regulatory changes the rules that we have to face in what we can get, the quality of the water, either mean that we have to buy more imported water to make up for less available local water, or we have to treat it more, which is more expensive. And so all of that leads to cost increases. And so these three things, the cost of everything going up, the cost of the water that we buy especially going up, and then the cost of either local water and making sure that it's at the highest quality is also having above inflationary increases. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the fact, even just looking at the last 5 years, what we've seen coming out of a historic period after COVID, where, as our customers know, with even things like the price of eggs, we've seen just well above what we've seen in the past in terms of price increases. And so for us, the general cost of everything going up over the last 5 years, and this would be things like normal chemicals or labor or the cost of a contractor, is about 5%, and that's 5% per year. And we expect things along that line to continue, whether because of tariffs or other cost increases. We've seen things special to us, like the cost of chlorine go up 3 times the amount that it was in 5 years. And during this time, we continue to expect that going forward. So on 2 other categories of costs, which are a significant part of our budget, energy, dealing with moving water primarily, and then the treatment process. We haven't seen inflationary levels as many of our customers look at their energy bills and see the same thing. It's been well above inflation, and so we've seen 10% per year be the average for the cost of energy during this time period. And we expect at least 10% going forward, and we've even been given recent notices, as was alluded to earlier by a customer, of 17% increases even between now and October, as the electric utilities deal with their own regulations and requirements, things like wildfire hardening and the like. And then building infrastructure is a big part of our business. And so we've seen those costs go well above inflation, as well as there's a limited supply of expert contractors that can do these projects. Their cost of materials, things like iron and copper and these kinds of things, are all have all seen significant increases during this period as well. So in short, everything's going up, and the things which are most specific to our business are going up above inflationary levels. Next slide, please. As was mentioned, the cost of the water that we're buying to bring into this region comes from Metropolitan, and they set rates that we have to pay. And so we've seen, as I mentioned, the general cost of inflation has been 5%, but we have seen the cost of our water from Metropolitan more than double over the last 15 years, and we expect for the next 4 years, which is what this rate increase is dealing with, to be about 7% per year during this time. And so their costs are going up, and they have cost pressures mostly relating to the supply of water and the looking at the amount of water sales. Their costs are fixed, and as their water sales decrease, they have to pay for the same amount. So that's where their pressures have been. So the rates that they impose on us, we have to pay, and that continues to be over half of our budget going forward. The one silver lining in all of this that we've seen, as Craig alluded to, is where we've been able to make deals for local water. Those costs actually are about inflationary levels, which look lower than the cost of the Metropolitan water. So those are the two lines below. You'll notice those aren't increasing as fast as Metropolitan, so that's a savings to our customers. Next slide.
Well, can you go back one, please? So getting to my point before about our local supply is not the same as other people's local supply, this graphic shows that. The dark line is a typical groundwater cost. The gold line is our groundwater cost. So we have to pay a fee to move groundwater into our area, and we have to use other people's facilities or lease water rights from other people or treat it through groundwater desalters to get it to an acceptable quality to blend with our other water. So it's great news that we have local supply, but here you can see there is a definite cost driver that we have to put into our rates to accommodate that. All right, next slide. Outreach efforts. So this super important to us here is, I don't want to say people don't care about water. They care about water when they need it, when they turn their faucet on. But talking about it and hearing about it and reading about it, we don't get a lot of following. So for our team to develop outreach and really get the message out to customers is a challenge. And we've worked really hard at this. And so I'd like Sarah to kind of summarize our outreach efforts to make sure that the public knows why we're doing this. We understand they don't like it. I don't like it to raise costs, but we only get money through rates, and so we have to be able to accommodate inflationary and cost increases. So Sarah, it was for you.
Yeah, so in terms of our rate outreach goals, they were very clear, proactive, and purposeful, with updates provided to this board monthly through committee meetings and board meetings for the last year. It's really important to know we did not set out to convince our customers to like a rate increase. I think we all agree nobody likes prices going up. Instead, we focused on several key goals. Transparency, providing very clear and honest information to our customers, our community partners, and of course our board of directors. Understanding, helping customers learn why changes are needed and clearly explaining the cost drivers and those revenue requirements. Choice, communicating through multiple channels based on customer preferences early and often, so there was a variety of ways to engage with us. And lastly, engagement, offering opportunities to listen and respond to questions and concerns. In support of these goals, we delivered a thoughtful year-long plus effort because a public hearing tonight is near the end of our outreach, not the beginning. We began more than a year ago trying early conversations of the budget process and future revenue needs, and transitioned into the summer period of last year where we launched an awareness campaign to help our customers see the full value of their water bill, that it supports more than that drop of water coming out of their faucet, but all of the systems, the processes, the treatment, the people, the pipelines that deliver that drop of water. And then we came to winter of 2024. We publicly introduced the rate process and proposal by launching a dedicated outreach program and implementation plan. We used both proactive strategies, so getting into the community, and reactive messaging, knowing that our customers would contact us. We wanted to be able to answer those questions as they came in. And ultimately, we did go above and beyond the legal requirements of the public hearing and the public notice and delivered a customer-first approach. So as you look at this slide, there's a lot of information here. And before I dive into some of these details, it's important to remind our board of directors that we started with listening. Before we even sent the first notice out, we surveyed our customers before the rate proposal and process was announced so that we could understand, one, their level of awareness of the services we offer, their current rates and charges, and also their communications preferences. And the results showed that our customers did understand our services fundamentally, which is really good news and a change from 4 years ago. We also heard from our customers that they wanted more information about rates, not less, especially and to no surprise when any changes to their rates were going to happen. So we heard that loud and clear. And we learned we could do better communicating billing information, specifically the price of water versus what it takes to deliver the water to them and remove it through those fixed charges that we see on the bill. So that was a good opportunity to focus on that specific topic. And then lastly, we learned from customers in advance that they care about the insights about what Western is doing locally to manage costs, to shore up water supply needs, and address statewide challenges. So all of that was integrated into what we talked about with customers throughout this process. So based on those preferences, our outreach was multifaceted with an emphasis on a few key ways customers told us would mean most to them. So as you look at this screen, if you start in the first column, the print collateral, that is our information out to customers. So kind of a one-way information sharing through informational materials, included postcards, card handouts, flyers, et cetera, delivered to about 25,000 customers. In addition to the 11 customized rate notices sent out to all 31,811 active customers, we offered 6 bill inserts and bill messages at key periods, as well as messages right on the outside of the bill envelope. These messages were also included in our digital bills, so those that do e-bill could also see that information. As you move to the second column, we didn't just stick to the hard copy communication because we know a lot of our customers prefer to connect with us digitally. And in fact, in our surveys, we learned that the biggest way customers wanted to hear about rate information was through email. So we really boosted up that option there and offered 9 different email newsletters across key points in this process, reaching 18,000 people per email. And then also engaged in the digital media space, reaching over 100,000 people across 206 posts to receive 3,800 engagements. So that's people who have liked, shared, commented, forwarded, any way they interacted with that content, all in that digital space. And then lastly, that third column you're looking at on your screen, I'll call out just a couple of items. This is our direct engagement. So that two-way interaction where we're listening and addressing questions in real time. We did this across more than 40 community partner meetings. These meetings also included customers that we know are highly engaged with us and often represent neighborhoods, come to our meetings. We reached out proactively to offer that information and address questions. We also went to our community. We heard people don't want to come to more meetings. They don't want to come to the district at 9:30 a.m. on a Wednesday. So we went to our neighborhood community meetings and delivered more than 15 presentations at those meetings that were really well attended. And then lastly, we wanted to make sure we weren't neglecting our other customer groups, like our commercial customers who are affected by these changes, and reach out directly to those that would be most impacted by the proposal. So bottom line, we really did use every tool that we could to make sure customers received accurate, timely, and relevant information the way they prefer it. Next slide. So throughout this process and all of that engagement that you saw, staff responded to nearly 100 individual customer questions and comments, whether that was through phone, email, social media, in-person meetings. These were not protests necessarily, but thoughtful questions and concerns. It really is a positive sign of an engaged and informed community that we were working with. And so the themes emerged through these discussions and outreach that you see on your screen here. Questions and concerns surfaced regarding inflation and overall just the cost of living. Everyone is feeling that pressure. The necessity and impact of the proposal. Why do we need this now? What support is there for customers with financial hardship? Are there programs available? We heard over and over through these meetings that the information provided was clear and understandable. So that showed we were hitting one of our core goals through this process. A lot of questions around how do we use our reserves? What about employee salaries? Is the rate only because we're gonna pay bonuses? You know, we heard that come through and we're able to respond to those questions. Wanted to know about our rates and rate proposal relative to other agencies in the neighborhood, which was shared during our workshops and other customer information sessions. Also, how are we working to save money and manage costs in addition to, well, the cost of the actual drop that I buy versus all these other charges on my bill. You've heard this before. And then, of course, overall comments and questions about just government spending overall. So those are the themes that we heard through the feedback and the questions from our customers. And we really used that information as a two-way dialogue. So throughout the last year and really the last 6 months, we used that in real time to adapt and improve our outreach and actually update our FAQs, update our information going out in response to what we were hearing from customers. Next slide. And lastly, this process gave us a meaningful opportunity to connect with customers about our programs that support them. We were able to launch a few new tools that put more control in our customers' hands over their water usage and bill. We were able to highlight the low income assistance program and actually boosted participation in that program by 12%. So that we're providing financial support to over 280 households this year alone. We were able to promote our new tool, the Water Use Portal, that gives near real-time water usage data to our customers, which is really helpful for those if they see a spike and are able to know, oh, it's because I had water running or I need to fix a leak or things like that, so real time in their hands. And then, of course, providing rebate information so that our customers have resources to be more efficient with their water use. So all in all, this summarizes the variety of ways we reached out to our community and what we actually did with that engagement throughout the process. Turn it back to you, Craig.
Thank you, Sarah. Next slide, please. So that's a lot of background. Let's get to the meat of the story. I'm going to turn it back over to Rick so he can talk about the specific bill impacts. Rick?
Yeah, so this whole next section gets to what we're actually proposing and how does that impact our customers. Next slide, please. So what is being proposed is a 4-year plan where we adjust rates as is typical for this district and what our customers have become accustomed to on July 1st of every year, one time, once per year for the next 4 years. And so what happens is we develop this study that we talked about before, the cost of service study, which goes to prove what is the cost of serving each type of customer and the benefits that they're receiving and implement that on the July 1st of every year. And so the study is really important. That's the 2-inch thick one that was referred to. That's been on our website since we notified our customers of the proposal. It was even included in the packet, and it's been available for question or comment from the public during this period. But what that does is show that what we are proposing for rates is what it costs us to provide that service to them. And so we're looking at this next 4-year period. It's the same as what we did in the last 4-year period, which is to do the study 4 years ago, and we've followed through on that plan every year. And it gives a basis for our customers as something what to expect and plan around going forward so there are no surprises. The last piece, which is the last bullet on here, and I'll stress, is this study was definitely driven with the customer in mind in trying to implement a plan that was predictable. And so these increases, you'll notice, are relatively level every year. That was done on purpose. using as many available resources as we could to smooth the rates out, meaning actually, in often years, these rates are less than what the actual cost of the service is, but we're applying things like property taxes or reserves to pay for projects so that the customers aren't having to pay the full amount in each year, but they can expect steady increases. Next slide, please. So getting into the next few slides, just to preview it. So this first slide gets into, for our typical residential customer, what their bill will be for water. The slide after that is the sewer-only cost if they happen to receive sewer service from us. And then the last one is if a customer of ours receives both, and sort of what their total bill would look like, which is often how they would want to look at it and get the full picture. And so before I get into the numbers here, I'll just highlight that when we talk about the rates that are being charged, these rates cover everything that's required to provide the service. And so that would obviously be our operational costs, so our staff, the cost for the chemicals, the cost for the contractors that we use, all the professionals, whether on staff or through contract, all of these things. But it's also the cost to buy the water from Metropolitan. That's that 50% of our budget number I shared earlier. It's the cost of debt, so these commitments, these loans that we've taken out to build infrastructure. We have annual payments that we have to make on those. And then as we build new infrastructure, the cost for that. And so these rates include all of these components. And even, as I mentioned before, trying to keep them steady, you'll notice the relatively similar numbers. In this period, 4-year period, we're actually using, for most of our retail areas, about $17 million in reserves to pay for projects to help keep this smooth. And only in one area, the Murrieta area, are we slightly adding back replenishing reserves, let's say about 800,000, because in the last period we used almost 5 million out of reserves to cover the cost of imported water as we were repairing a well, and we had to buy that more costly water. So getting into the numbers for this one, as Craig mentioned, we were thinking as we did and developed the budget, and during the budget process is when we look at cost efficiencies and operational efficiencies and what we can cut. So even after that period, we were thinking 8% is what we were going to need moving forward. As we dug even deeper through the exhaustive cost of service process, we were able to get that down for both of the major retail areas, Riverside and Murrieta. So you'll notice it's not 8%, it's, depending on each year, roughly about 7% for water only for Riverside, and mid-6s for the Murrieta area. What this translates to for a typical customer is between $9 and $10 a month additional per year, every year for these 4 years, and in the Murrieta area between $8 and $9 or $8 and $10. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this slide is about if we're just talking the sewer service. So when we talk sewer service, this is all of the costs that it takes to take the sewage from someone's home or business, take it to our treatment facility, the really intensive process it takes to treat wastewater, and then either after that, the process to recycle it or release it back to the environment to be used elsewhere. And so incredibly mechanical, infrastructure-heavy process and energy-intensive process. And so that being said, we were thinking similarly about 7% necessary increases, and these came in depending on which treatment area we're talking about. These are all based on the treatment facility that takes care of a particular service area, came in about that. So we're looking at similarly about 7% for the Riverside area, and then the Murrieta area about 4%. And when you look at dollars per month, in the range of $4 to $7 per month, depending on which area we're talking about in Riverside, and in the Murrieta area about $2 per month. And so when you go to the next slide, which combines these for a customer with both, and this is the number that would have been more familiar to our customers as they look at their Prop 218 notice. Next slide, please. The total bill, Riverside, we were talking 7% per year, and Murrieta about 6% per year, ranging between $13 to $15 for Riverside and $10 to $12 per month for Murrieta. Next slide. This slide covers the handful of our other types of customers that aren't residential, largely commercial. We get things like the water used for landscaping, recycled water that we use for that, and then some specialty service areas. I won't go through each one of these, but we'll just highlight for the big ones with the most customers, like commercial and the landscape potable. It's the same percentage range of increases that our households are seeing as well. And the only ones that are different than that relate to a specialty change that the board had approved in consolidating some service areas back in December, and we'd gone into that in detail back during the workshops. And so they have a first-year correction, and then it goes forward, as typical with the other customers. Next slide. Sarah had alluded to this one, which was our customers' interest. Well, how do we compare to others? And the general statement is we're all facing the same pressures. The cost of chemicals and metropolitan water and energy affects us all, and the cost of infrastructure. So you're seeing very similar increases across the region, generally in the 7 to 10% range. Eastern being our closest comparison as a large agency dealing with a large amount of metropolitan water, as well as Elsinore, too, and you'll see increases there in that 7 to 8% range. Next slide.
All right, let me kind of wrap it up here with cost management efforts. So most of what we've been talking about is out of our control. We're reacting to external costs and external charges. And when we talk about Metropolitan Water District, and Rick showed that graphic where MET rates are going to go up at 7%. In reality, this year and next year, they're going up at 11% and 10% because of special things that are happening at Metropolitan. So, it's a tough environment, and it's a little bit difficult to predict what's going to happen when others are in control of that. But we can manage some costs. So let's go to the next slide. And, we take this very seriously. This, I don't think this makes it kind of out of the boardroom and out of our offices about how hard we work on that and what we accomplish. But these are some things that we do just to save the customers money. And we think this is a really important part of our job. We've secured about $70 million in grant funding. Very proud of that. That continues. We've just recently gotten some more good news about grants. We hope that continues. We're not sure politically on the federal level, especially if we'll be this successful in the future, but we've been doing great. And that money goes directly to offsetting the cost of projects that customers don't have to pay for. Energy upgrades. This is obviously electricity is going up fast. We use a lot of electricity. Water's extremely heavy. When you have to move it, it's extremely expensive to move. And so we embarked on a program with UC Riverside to figure out how can we maintain water quality, maintain fire protection, keep our reservoirs as full as possible, but not move water during peak energy charges. And so we've developed an entire program to avoid peak energy charges. That has saved us about $500,000 a year. Replacing aging pipes, that doesn't sound like you're saving money, it sounds like you're spending money. But when we have breaks and failures and we have to unexpectedly do an emergency repair of a pipeline, it costs us as much as 5 times as much to do it as a planned, publicly bid, competitively bid project. So it's really important for us to replace that aging infrastructure. Our engineering team watches it very closely. We do a lot of condition assessments so that we're ready to replace that infrastructure when it doesn't make sense to fix it anymore. We fix it until we can't fix it anymore, and then we replace it. Other things that we've done, Rick mentioned chlorine has gone up 300%. So on their own, our wastewater treatment team said, there's got to be ways we can operate this plant with less chlorine. And so they took it upon themselves, and they came up with new operating procedures that still met water quality requirements and are saving a lot of chlorine. I asked them, they told me about that. I said, well, how much chlorine? They said about $1,000 a day of savings. That's $365,000 a year, just because they were able to figure out a more creative way to use the chemical and still meet discharge requirements. They did the same thing with gas. Gas has been very volatile, went way up a couple of years ago, And they figured out a way to use more methane gas that was being produced on site rather than buying gas on the open market, and saved us another $150,000 a year. So that's just an ongoing process that our operators use. Groundwater banking, we've constructed projects, we've invested in projects with other agencies to capture stormwater that's local, put it in the ground so we can produce, so we have more local water. That's one of the ways that we've changed the dynamic of 100% imported water to a 50-50 share. And then property tax. As Rick mentioned, we've reallocated some of our property tax to offset rates for customers. A lot of going on behind the scenes. I just highlighted 6 things that we've been doing to help manage costs for our customers. Next slide. All right, so that kind of wraps up what we're doing. As a presentation, I will be happy to answer questions before we open the public hearing if the board has questions about the presentation.
No? I just had one. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I turned that on. One of the speakers mentioned the increase in January. Could you touch on that? I think that
Sure.
was the pass-through.
Yeah, that was a pass-through. So as part of our rate program, the board will also adopt a pass-through provision. And we had to use that pass-through provision in January, and I mentioned Metropolitan had projected 5% rate increases. Rick's now using 7% because their 5% long-term projection turned into an 11% rate increase. So we had to pass that through to the customers. We aren't collecting enough revenue to pay that bill. So we had to quickly adjust. So we've increased our projections. You know, this, I don't want to say it's totally crystal ball, but, you know, we're asking our finance team to try and figure out what Metropolitan's board is going to do with their rates. And they approve rates in 2-year segments. So, you know, there is something to, at the end of the 4-year rate program, we do have a little more financial risk in our projections. And so there potentially could be another adjustment at the end of our 4-year rate program. But that's where it came from this time.
Okay.
I have a quick question. What just, because I've heard it before, you just showed the cost-saving measures or programs that we have. You know, are the public, like myself, when I hear cost savings, I'm hearing I get more money in my pocket. Why wouldn't that be the case?
Yeah.
What happens with the $500,000 we saved, essentially?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't go into some piggy bank. It actually goes into savings. So, and we report back to the board every single year. We give quarterly financial reports. We give budget to actual reports. At the end of the year, we are very clear and transparent with the board that, you know, we had projected we'd get this much X property tax revenue, and we got more or we got less. And then we talk to the board about where that excess money is going to go. So what happens to that money? That means that when we do our next rate adjustment, we can have a lower rate adjustment because that money was set aside by things that happened during the year. It would be the same thing with cost savings. So if we're able to save costs with less gas, that goes into the next year's budget, and we figure out how to lower the budget, which translates into lower rates for the customers. The difficult thing for the customers is they don't see that. They don't get a number that says, really, we should have raised it 9%, but we only raised it 7% because we did all these great things throughout the year. It's very hard to calculate, obviously, and we're not doing that. But that's what happens, is it lowers future rate increases.
Good question. Fazia?
I have a question. So, piggybacking on her question, why can't we return those savings to the customers? That's the question we get often asked. So.
Yeah, if that kind of goes to the smoothing of rates. If we were in a position where every time we saved some money, we gave it back to the customers, every time we didn't save money, we would do the opposite, right? So every time chlorine gas went up, we would give an instant adjustment to all the customers and say, hey, chlorine went up 300%, we need more money, we're going to give you a rate adjustment this month. Murrieta is a perfect example. Murrieta, we had one of our major wells had to be replaced. It was offline for a year? A little over a year. That groundwater, which is much less expensive, we had to stop producing that. We had to buy imported water from Metropolitan at 3 times the cost. We didn't give the customers a rate increase. We used our reserves, and we kept a steady rate increase, and now that's what Rick was talking about. Now we have to go through a long-term process to slowly build those reserves back up to a safe level, but we utilized those reserves. Had we not done that, it would have been, how big a rate increase? 17% instant rate increase the minute we shut off that well and started construction. We don't think that's appropriate to do to the customers. So it goes both ways.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other board questions? Okay.
All right, then I will turn it over to legal counsel to open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Members of the board. The board will now conduct a public hearing. The requirements of Article 13D, Section 6 of the California Constitution, commonly known as Proposition 218, are being followed. The notice of the hearing date was mailed on April 11, 2025, 54 days before the date and time of this public hearing, which exceeds the 45 days requirement. The notice was mailed, postage prepaid, and deposited in the U.S. Postal Service to each record owner who is a subject to the rates proposed to be established and reaffirmed. A record owner means the owner of a parcel whose name and address appears on the last equalized secured property tax assessment roll. In addition, a notice of the hearing was mailed to all tenants who are directly liable for the payment of water and sewer rates and service charges who are current customers in the Western Municipal Water District's billing system. The purpose of the public hearing is for the board to hear all verbal testimony and consider all valid protests concerning the proposed resolutions, which would adopt the increased water and sewer rates. Verbal testimony are for the board's consideration as they vote and are not considered a valid protest. Formal protests must be submitted in writing. If you wish to submit a valid protest today, you can submit your protest to Western Water staff, Sonia in the corner, using the available form. The following criteria must be met for the protest to be considered valid: the property owner, customer name, parcel number and/or service address, state whether the letter responds to the proposed water or sewer rates or both, and it must be signed by the property owner / customer. The hearing will be conducted in the following manner. The board will consider all valid protests. If valid protests against the proposed rates are presented by a majority of the owners of the identified parcels upon which the rates and charges are to be imposed, and any tenants who are directly liable for the payments of rate and service charges, the board may not impose the rates and charges. If valid protests against the proposed rates are not presented by a majority of the owners of the identified parcels upon which the rates and charges are to be imposed, and any tenants who are directly liable for the payment of rates and service charges, the board may impose the rates. Madam President, turn it over to you.
Okay. The public hearing is now open. I request that General Manager, Mr. Miller, provide information as to how public testimony will be received.
All right, thank you, President Roten. So we'll now take public comment. Those of you who have submitted a public comment card, if you didn't do that, you can still do that with Sonia. You'll have 3 minutes to speak on this issue. This is our part of the public hearing where we're required to take receipt of public testimony. The board will not be addressing responses to that public testimony during the hearing. A discussion of the proposed rates by the board will take place after the close of the hearing and prior to the action being taken by the board. We will now hear from anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this public hearing agenda item. The board secretary will call speakers forward who have submitted cards.
At this time, first, I will go to our Zoom audience, and if you are on the Zoom call and wish to make a public comment, please raise,
And have not done so already.
and have not already done so, please raise your hand and I will call on you. At this time, I'll call Chris Gray. Mr. Gray, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Chris Gray, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Western Riverside Council of Governments, which is a regional agency that includes Riverside County, 18 incorporated cities, and 2 water districts, including Western. I'm here today to provide a regional perspective on the issues being discussed tonight. One important item I wanted to share with you is that our region continues to be one of the fastest growing areas of California. Recent projections indicate that Riverside County is likely to add the same number of residents as all of LA County in the next 25 years. This growth requires significant investments in infrastructure of all types. Because of that, we support efforts by public agencies like Western to ensure that everyone pays their fair share of future infrastructure costs. Unfortunately, the state of California and the federal government appear unable or unwilling to help fund the infrastructure we need, which will force agencies like Western to rely on local sources to fund this needed infrastructure. We recognize that raising fees or adjusting rates have an impact on families and businesses. For our own programs, WCOG has always adjusted our costs and fees through a transparent and collaborative process. We support efforts by other agencies to undertake these difficult conversations in a transparent and collaborative fashion, as Western has done, and it continues to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Seeing no further requests on Zoom, I'll now move to the room. At this time, I'll call Debbie Cherney to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Cherney, and I am a resident of Orange Crest and have been a customer of Western for the last 13 years. I am the former Chief Financial Officer and Deputy General Manager of your neighbor, Eastern Municipal Water District, so I know a few things about rates and finance, and I'm currently the CEO of the San Bernardino County Pension Fund. First, I saw today on LinkedIn that you've been upgraded to a AAA bond rating. Congratulations. That is a testament to the quality of your management team. It is a testament to the board's prudent fiscal management. It is the creme de la creme. It also means that when you need to go borrow, the customers have to pay that back, and it'll be at the lowest borrowing rates you could possibly achieve. So good job. Secondly, turning to the rate proposals, none of us as customers want to pay a higher bill, period. Especially now when we're facing these very significant economic uncertainties coming at us from all angles. But at the same time, as we don't want to pay higher bills, we absolutely want clean, safe drinking water. And in order to have that, you need to make these investments in the infrastructure. You need to maintain it. You need to continue to be part of the policy conversations at the statewide and federal levels to ensure that we have access to water supplies and that we'll be able to do so in a cost-effective manner. Maintaining Western's critical infrastructure and exploring alternatives for water supplies is imperative, and you can't do anything else. So lastly, I wanted to comment on the outreach. I know there was a comment early in the meeting that the outreach was not being particularly successful, and I couldn't disagree more. I have seen signs in my neighborhood for meetings. I've received lots of things in the mail. I read those bill inserts that Sarah and her team work so hard on, and I really think that the plain language that you're using in your communications is very successful. In the past, we did a lot of wonky water stuff. It was nerdy. We used lots of vernacular that nobody understood unless you worked in water. You guys have done a really exceptional job at changing that, and you should be commended for that. So thank you for your work. I do urge you to adopt the resolutions as presented by your staff.
Thank you, Ms. Cherney. I will call Ms. Callie to the podium.
Out of respect for the directors, I felt like they should have had at least 3 rates to consider instead of just pigeonholed into one rate. Also, why are we having rate changes when we had one January? That seems like a lot just a few months ago. But I also want to say that with the tiered rating, I feel that it's unfair because we go on the premise of scarcity when California was dumping their snowpack water right into the bay and out to the ocean, making it look like have scarcity, and we don't. And then we're getting controlled, and also with rate changes because of this, they can use that saying, hey, we have to do tiered rating. We're going to penalize you if you use X amount. And it doesn't even need to be on usage, it could be a leak. And I realize that's usage too, but not intentional usage. You can have a leak. I had one, it cost me over $1,000, even though I found out at the end of the day, actually it was getting into evening, and I fixed it the next morning, and I was only minimally reimbursed. So I don't like tiered rating because I think you either find the cost of cubic foot of water and stick to that. People don't waste. They're not wasteful. How many people would waste water? Very few. So I would like to hope they consider that along with the smart meter removal, or put a moratorium on that. Thank you. Oh, and I hope you say no on the rate changes, because there is a no vote too.
Thank you. At this time, I will ask for the last call for public comment. Seeing no requests, the public comment period is closed.
I want to make sure, before we close the public hearing, that anyone who's going to submit a protest has done so. You can submit them over there. Once the public hearing has been closed, there will be no more acceptance of protests. We've been accepting them ever since we published the notice. It's kind of a last call. Okay. With that, Madam President, I've heard all the speakers. We've received all the written proposals. I would recommend that we close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. I hereby declare the public hearing closed. We will now take a 10-minute break, and the board secretary and legal counsel will tabulate the written protests.
So shall we start at 7:20 again?
Okay?
We have a request for 7:25.
Up to the board.
Yeah.
Is 7:25 acceptable?
That's fine, yes. I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. We are in recess, and we will reconvene at 7:25. We will reconvene in 1 minute. I think I missed my class. That's okay. I told him I was going to miss. I sent my professor an email. They're not waiting for me, trust me. I show 7:25.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order at 7:25. Thank you for your patience. And, oh, let me see which one of these things I'm supposed to read now.
You toss it
Legal
to me.
counsel,
All right.
yes.
All right. Thank you, President Roden. Okay, so pursuant to Government Code Section 53755, only one protest per parcel filed by an owner or tenant of the parcel upon which the water and/or sewer rates and service charges are proposed for imposition, or tenant of the parcel who is directly liable for the payment of the proposed water and sewer rates and service charges, may be counted in calculating whether a majority protest exists. In this instance, a majority protest would exist if Western Water had received 12,541 valid protests for water rates and service charges prior to the close of the public hearing, and a majority protest would exist if Western Water had received 4,858 valid protests for sewer rates and service charges. Prior to the close of the public hearing, Western Water received 7 valid protests from qualifying owners and tenants of the identified parcels for water rates and service charges, and 7 valid protests from qualifying owners and tenants of the identified parcels for sewer rates and service charges. Western Water has complied with Assembly Bill 2257, and Western Water has responded to legal objections received by the specified deadline of May 27, 2025. Here, a majority protest does not exist for water rates and service charges, and a majority protest does not exist for sewer rates and service charges. Therefore, the board may proceed to consider the proposed resolutions. My advice to the board would be to consider both Resolution 3352 for the water rates and Resolution 3353 for the sewer rates in a single motion if the board desires to move both resolutions forward. Available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Do any board members have questions for legal counsel or questions in general or comments? Director Denstedt.
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate that. My question is going to be on a couple of things. One, I was really pleased that we have a financial expert, not just up here on the dais, but we have one in the audience. And so I was really pleased to hear the pointing out, because that was one of my questions, was our AAA rating. And I appreciate the comments from the member of the audience who was so generous in raising those points. But I really wanted to get an opportunity to our CFO to talk about why a credit rating agency would do an upgrade in this instance, and how is it truly beneficial to us as an agency and to the customers.
Thank you, Director Denstedt. And so, actually, our member of the audience covered a lot of these items really well,
Yes.
but I'll just say, so we're rated by 2 rating agencies, 2 of the 3 major ones that rate institutions all over the United States and even all over the world. Some as large as the largest companies like Google, down to smaller ones, including municipalities like ourselves. And so they do an intensive review of all of our financials, and they sit down and they grill us as part of a presentation, a multi-hour presentation, and then they ask a slew of questions after that for everything that they didn't get during that time. And this is everything from water supply to our infrastructure program to our intended borrowing, and all of this to say is you have a third party that does this as their main expertise that's evaluating us. And so it is quite a badge of honor for them to come back and say, we cannot rate you any higher in terms of your financial resiliency. And really what they're saying to investors is there's very little risk. I mean, the lowest risk possible. Technically now we're higher rated than the federal government, to put it that way.
And
and
that's what I
so-
wanted to hear. Mhm.
And so what this does is that means that the investors that will buy our debt when we need to go and build infrastructure and borrow for that are willing to give us the lowest interest rates. And all of that directly flows through into the rates that we're proposing, because that means less cost for building infrastructure.
No, and thank you for that detailed information. I think it's really important that we emphasize, I've been working on this since I've been elected to the board, and when I started here, our credit rating was much lower, and we were at AA, and then we got to AA plus, and now we're at triple. And this has been a milestone, because it really does mean a tremendous amount of money that is saved to our customers over the long haul, and what this does for us. And it really talks about that it's a testament of staff's efforts to try to control costs and balance our budget continually and make sure that we're doing the best job that we can. So I appreciate that information. The other thing that I wanted to point out too is the fact, Mr. Miller, you had made a comment about staff taking tremendous measurements to try to reduce our costs as far as the things that we do in the field. Chlorine was mentioned over the high cost and all of these things. But in true transparency, I really think that we need to share with the public and be very transparent about how many water quality tests we perform every single year for water quality, for public health and safety, for our customers. I think it's really important for people to hear that number, because I think it's a little bit of a shocker. So I'll let you do the shocking.
It is. If you're not in the industry, it is kind of shocking. We don't talk about it, so people don't really know that it's going on. But there are state mandates and requirements, and we exceed all. We do more. Exceed's a tough term. We do more than we're required. We do somewhere on the order of 30,000 water quality samples a year. So we're taking samples multiple times per day throughout the system, because we have to ensure that every tank that delivers to every neighborhood is delivering water that meets every standard. And so we have to be out there in every little subsystem and testing that all the time. And, that's why we have to have state certified operators. They have to be trained in how to take the samples. They have to be trained in what the sample data means. They have to be trained in how to prevent any kind of contaminants from entering the system. And then the same thing on the wastewater side. I was talking about a lot of cost savings at our wastewater treatment plants. We have to meet very stringent guidelines in what's discharged either back into the environment, into the Santa Ana River or some other creek, or put into, I'm pointing this way because this is where our recycled water system is. And we have to be very careful to meet water quality standards in the recycled water system. So an enormous effort obviously goes in to protecting public health.
No, and I think that's an excellent point, and I think we need to make sure that the public is really aware of what that really looks like, because when I think we talk about water quality in particular, and we talk about chlorine, people think about what they're pouring into their pools. And it's a very different process, it's a very different thing that we're doing, and so I wanted to really just get that number out there. I think it's very important that we take seriously amounts of public health and public safety in terms of everything that we do for both the water and the sewer side to protect not only our customers, but the environment.
And in both cases, there's oversight by the state. All this has to be reported to the state. If there's ever a violation, you have to report the violation within a specific time to the state. They come out and investigate and evaluate. And so it's a very, very important process that we're very careful to make sure we comply with.
Absolutely. And then the last thing I wanted to really point out, I was absolutely fascinated by Kurt Schwabe's comments. And, you know, I really had not had it put in that context before. And so, you know, I know we've partnered with him on other studies. I know we've worked with him on a variety of different points and data collections, and he has been a tremendous friend to this district to be able to validate a lot of different things and actually work with his student bodies, right? He's a professor, he's highly respected in his field, and a lot of people come to him for varying information, and I was just fascinated. So my question would be, you know, with all of this data collection that he's done, and I'm sure at some point, and somebody here has probably been shared some of the information in that study that he has compiled, and I'd wondered if that was going to be made available to the public, should they ever want to do that. Are we going to share that on our website and do some kind of a sharing of information? Because, you know, we talk about the value of water, and we talk about what it is that we're doing, and, you know, and the comparables for bottled water, and what the cost is of bottled water for the same thing you're drinking. And so I just wondered if it was something that we had at our fingertips that we might be able to share if anybody ever wanted to read in depth all of the studies that he's done.
Yeah, well, we would definitely will have to check with him. It's his work.
Absolutely.
He published it.
Absolutely.
So we have to be careful about, you know, posting someone else's work on there that's not accessible to the public. But he's done that on behalf of the water agencies. He's an expert in the field. He speaks nationally and internationally about it. It's really good work. We all use it. It really is kind of a check and balance for us that we use and that other agencies have used also. So affordability is a very difficult topic because I'm very careful with that information because the public all has their own opinion of what's affordable. And so for us to come out and say our water's affordable, that may be true for some people, but not for others. So we're very careful. That's not the metric of how we set our rates. We set our rates based on the cost of service
Yes.
and what it costs to serve water to our customers. His work is just looking at, well, how does that stack up under state or national standards?
No, absolutely, but I think it was really good information, and it was certainly numbers I hadn't heard before, so I'm really fascinated by that. And then going back to, and can somebody please give me the date on this because I am a loss. How long have we had our customer assistance program in place? Can anybody give me a time frame? How many years that's been in place for people, should they need assistance with paying their bill that we've had?
I'll probably turn this over to Sarah, but it's been more than a decade that we've had a customer assistance program.
She's looking. I knew somebody would madly start looking for that
I
date.
am looking at a report I recently received from staff that indicates it's been more than 10 years standing.
Okay.
Wait,
And
let's
I have
let's
a
ask someone
customer
who's been
service
here more than 10
representative
years.
who's been here. I'll turn it over to Oz. 13 years.
Okay.
More than 13.
Thank
So
you. No,
more than 13.
it-
Thank you, Oz.
No, it seemed to strike me that it took me 7 years to try to get that program established. So it was my first 7 years on this board, and I've been here for a hot second longer than that. So I just thank you for that. And we take that very seriously because you know we know that this is a pinch, and we don't like it, but we have to be responsible with what we're doing. So. With that, Madam President, that would conclude my questions for today. Thank you.
Okay. Director Gardner?
Okay, a couple of things. Rick mentioned it kind of in passing, but this is our second AAA rating. So we were AAA rated by 2 of the 3 rating agencies, and working on the 3rd one. So, but we've got the bigger 2. And as everybody mentioned, that is important for the savings for borrowing money when we need to do that for big projects. And that does happen. I just want to note, we often don't talk about it, but one of the duties of us as a board is to make sure that this organization stays healthy enough that it is around to serve our kids and their kids and your kids. We could look good in the eyes of some of our customers if we didn't spend any money, and we didn't increase rates, but then the entity goes downhill, and sometime, somewhere, other people are gonna have to pay a lot more money to get it back on its feet. So part of our job is to make sure that the agency stays healthy, and is in a position to serve their customers, our customers, long after all of us are gone. To Director Denstedt's question on how many samples are tested, and the answer was 30,000-ish a year, but each of those samples has a whole bunch of tests run on it. So the actual number of tests is going to be probably in the hundreds of thousands.
Maybe multiplied by 100.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very large number of tests that are run, just on a regular basis. Some we're required to do, some we do for our own information to help us operate the system better. I wanted to thank all of our customers who provided input to us in the various workshops and community meetings and talking to directors and staff individually, taking the time to participate this evening. We really do want to know what you think, and we want to try to do our best to have you as educated as you would like to be about what goes on in having water come out of your tap on the second floor when you open that tap. And understand a little bit about why it's pretty expensive. And none of us deny that it is. We've had a pretty big shift in the last little less than 10 years probably, in the way we try to interface with our customers. We're working really hard to be open and available, and I think our staff does, in my opinion, our staff does a really good job of that. But to our customers who are out there or here listening, tell us how we can do better. We'll never be perfect, but we would like to be as good as we possibly can. I think that's it for comments. Thank you.
Okay. Directors?
I have questions first. So I have a letter here from the Riverside Chamber of Commerce, who is actually in support, but they have recommendations, and so I kind of just wanted to walk through their recommendations, if they're feasible, plausible, or not. And then I think there was a public comment that kind of went into that. So one of the recommendations is to phase it in or give a 60 to 90-day pause, which is one of the comments we heard today. Is that possible?
Yes, we read that letter carefully, and Nick Adcock from the Chamber, and I spoke about it last week, and he gave me a heads up that was going to be a recommendation. And it's at this point in time, it's not possible to pause it. Because it's very technical, and it's part of the 218 process. Because the cost of service study was done based on rates being adjusted on July 1, that is how they calculated how much revenue. Rates at 7% starting July 1 meets our revenue requirement for the budget. That's what the board is deciding on the public hearing. If we delay it by 3 months, we're not collecting enough revenue. The cost of service study is now invalid. We couldn't say, we can't change the 7% to 8%, because we need to collect more revenue in the first year if we delayed it, because we still have the same costs. So Prop 218 doesn't allow you to do that without going through the whole process all over again. So we'd have to rewrite the cost of service study, we'd have to renotice the public hearing, we'd have to go through this whole process all over again. And it would result in us increasing the rates
From what
in
that
that
was
first
last.
year from 7% to something else, depending on what the math turned out to be in the cost of service study. So I don't recommend that we do that. It's the board's decision. But we can't just approve those rates and delay the implementation. Our attorney will not allow us to do that, and he may want to discuss that also.
Well, I think Craig said it well. It's a non-starter. I mean, yeah, at least for the purposes of our hearing today, we'd have to basically start over.
If I could just add something to that, it actually costs our customers money to delay, because we'd have to redo the cost of service study, we'd have to do all these hearings and all the outreach again, and so they would pay for that twice. And they'd still, assuming that the revenue requirement that the rates will cover is a number that they would support, they're asking to pay more money for the same thing, which honestly doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. Okay, my next question is, I guess, a two-part question, so I'll just ask them both. They also talked about a periodic review by the board to ensure revenue are tracking against costs. Is that a common practice? And the second question is, if a review is done periodically or throughout these rate increases, and these 4 years, excuse me, and it is determined in any certain year that revenue is surpassing costs, is there a process to stop, pause, reduce the adjustment?
Answer to both of those is yes. I assume you'd like some more detail than yes. So in answer to the first one, is there a process to inform the board of how we're doing on revenue versus expenditures and whether we're collecting the right amount of revenue? We have two major ways that we're showing the board that throughout the year. We do quarterly budget to actual reports that are public documents. They're presented at the Finance Committee and then accepted by the board. Those are available to the public. But the big one that we do is the year end. And the year end is where we can really evaluate property tax revenue, investment revenue, and what our expenditures truly were. And that's where it's kind of the year-end books where you say, yes, the rates were appropriate, the rates were under, and we had to take money out of reserves to meet our costs, or we had surplus, which will go into reserves and then lower future rate adjustments. That's one tool that we use with the board. The other one is we have an independent audit that the board controls the auditor. We've started that process, and we get an annual audit, independent from all of us, that talks exactly about that. How much money did you raise? What were your expenditures? And are you meeting appropriate national standards for auditing? So we have two different tools, and they're all public tools, or all publicly available.
And then I don't know if you can hear. The second part of the question, if
Oh, sorry, I remember. Sorry, you're reporting that out to the chamber, so the chamber can trust, I'm interpreting that our rates were appropriate. So we can share those with the chamber. I think the chamber's asking to ensure that Western is doing that.
Sure.
We're doing that. So we clearly need to communicate that back to the chamber. We have a great relationship with the chamber. I give them regular updates on water supply conditions and what Western's up to. I'm going to make very sure that we incorporate that because they're asking for it. To me, it hasn't been high on their list of things they want to cover, but now we'll cover that for them because we want to make sure they're comfortable.
Sorry, the second part of my question was that if at any of these years we find that we are collecting more than what we're actually spending, is there a process to stop, pause, or reduce these proposed adjustments?
The 218 process allows us to have less of a rate increase. We can't exceed what you're going to consider for the 4-year period. If it was percentage less and we didn't need it, we're allowed to do that without going through the whole process all over again, so we can do that.
Okay. Those are my questions. I hope I might have more. I don't know if anyone else does.
Fazia, did you have any? Okay. I just, believe it or not, I don't have a question. I know. I don't know what's wrong with me. I've gotten a lot of information. I can't even think of a question to ask. But, well, I don't know. I probably do have a corner that's bent here somewhere, but I just wanted to say, and I think we've heard this from some of our public speakers and from the board, none of us likes prices going up. I mean, that's pretty human common sense. You know, we don't like it. And so this has been a process, what, a year, 18 months, I think you said. And, you know, my very initial, way back at the start of it was, oh, okay, here we go. Another agency's going to raise their prices. And we've just kind of gotten used to that. But I've witnessed and seen what has gone into these documents and what has gone out to the ratepayers. And I tend to have a bit of a skeptical nature. I do ask a lot of questions, which is kind of funny that I don't have any tonight, but I feel very reassured that although, yes, if this is approved here tonight, it is an increase, and it's an increase over 4 years, but it is being used so wisely and so carefully. And there aren't many government agencies that I would feel comfortable saying that about. But I think because I've seen it transpire and evolve and what has gone into it, and you're right, Director Gardner, we're not perfect. No one is. But this process was pretty darn close from what I can tell. And again, I think you also mentioned, please, we want to hear from you if your concerns and your questions and your thoughts, because, you know, it always helps to have input from all different places and people. So we always do want to have that. But I want to thank staff for what has gone into this, and that I know that I can pick up the phone and call Craig, and if it isn't he and I discussing it, he gets me to whoever it is that I need to discuss it with, and I can get the answer, and I can understand something that, you know, I may not have understood. For instance, the Chamber's request to, you know, put this off for 60 days. That sounds like such common sense to me, but when you learn about what this process is, especially this 218 process, I did not realize the legal intricacies that go into the 218 process. And when you hear that, it's like, well, no, darn it, we can't just postpone it for 60 days. It seems like we should be able to, you know, we're the boss, but it doesn't always work like that. So, but I appreciate learning that information and being able to share it with other people who may also be wondering the same thing. Why can't they just put it off for 60 days? Come on, how hard is that? Well, it's very difficult and expensive. So anyway, I don't want to ramble on here because you guys probably want to go home at some point. But I just want to thank staff, and I'm thankful for this process. This is the first time. When I got on the board in August of 21, the board had just gone through this earlier that spring, around this time of year. And so I wasn't a part of that whole 4-year rate plan and hearings and all of that. So this is really my first go with it, other than looking at the budget each year and checking, you know, what's coming in, what's going out, are we where we need to be, that kind of a thing. This was more involved than I thought it was going to be. So, and rightly so, it should be. This is nothing to take lightly. It's really important to us, but it's even more important to you, the people that we serve. And I love there's one of the little captions in the PowerPoint that talks about how all of everything that it takes to run the agency for our retail customers comes from our retail customers. and it's all spent there. And that, for whatever reason, that just gave me clarity and reassurance in my mind. So I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight, for their comments, and I don't know if the board has anything else they'd like to share. Oh, Gracie, go ahead.
I just, I had actually prepared something because this is very difficult for me. As I probably have mentioned one too many times, I represent the bulk of ratepayers in the district, and so I'm just gonna read it, and because this is actually a very tough vote for me. So first and foremost, I want to express my sincere appreciation for the outstanding efforts of Western staff in preparing and explaining this rate proposal. When I began on the board, when I first started knocking on doors when I ran for this office, the common theme was Western is hiding something. Through this process and other things, but specifically this process, I can tell you there's nothing further from the truth. Our staff has done a phenomenal job at touching our community and talking with our community and trying to get them out here, and to so much so that I felt that burden off of me. As their representative, and so just wonderful job. Their outreach efforts have been thorough. The Western's cost-saving strategies are very well considered, and their commitment to transparency is evident in the materials and presentations they have shared with the community. I have no doubt that their intentions have been sincere. They don't, like she said, they don't want you to love raising rates, but they want you to know about them and why they're important. As well as just in general, the staff's budget responsibility are deeply appreciated. In particular, I want to recognize Craig Miller, our general manager, for his leadership and dedication in this process. Craig has consistently listened to the concerns of both the board and the community, making himself very available and ensuring we have all the information we need to make informed decisions. Just as Laura said, this process is incredibly complicated, even for those with experience in it. It's very complicated, and Craig has been very accessible. His accessibility and responsiveness have not gone unnoticed, and I am grateful for his service. Despite the relatively low number of protest letters received, I know firsthand that many of our community are deeply concerned about the impact of a, let's be real, 28% rate increase over the next 4 years, which is approximately $40 per average on a household bill. While that does seem modest for some, I recognize that for many families, especially seniors, people on fixed incomes, and those living paycheck to paycheck, even a small increase can feel overwhelming in an era of persistently high inflation, rising housing costs, and financial burdens. But Western is not immune to those struggles, and that is why these proposals are important. Although we want to add to those concerns that many ratepayers are still adjusting from the pass-through rate increases that went into effect this January, compounding the financial pressure in their homes. I lastly want to acknowledge that the board today is faced, I feel like it's difficult, but facing a very, very difficult decision. The board members who are prepared to vote in favor of this rate increase are making an honorable and courageous choice. Recognizing that we need to maintain staff growth, sustain critical infrastructure, and uphold Western's mission in delivering reliable water service to all our ratepayers. I respect each and every one of them and deeply know that their decisions today are rooted in wanting the long-term health of this agency. However, I made a promise to residents that I would fight raising rates and protect working families. While I don't believe that now that we are hurting working families, I do believe that promise matters. While I understand and appreciate the financial responsibilities and importance of infrastructure investment, I feel compelled to keep faith with voters and residents who entrusted me with this position. Therefore, despite my profound respect for Western staff, our general manager, and my fellow board members, I cannot in good conscience support this rate increase at this time. I remain committed to working collaboratively. I hope you understand my decision. I'm here to discuss it if you'd like.
Okay, any other comments or questions? No? Do we have a motion to consider the adoption of Resolution 3352 and 3353?
Madam President, I would move that the board adopt Resolution 3352 and Resolution 3353 as presented.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, Ms. Ford, whenever you're ready.
Director Gardner,
Aye.
Director Torres,
No.
Director Dinstedt,
Aye.
Director Rizvi, Director Roten.
Yes.
Thank you. President Roten, the motion passes 4-1 with Director Torres voting no.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to item 7B, adopt resolutions 3350 and 3351, approving the fiscal year 2025-26 budgets and levy of special taxes for Community Facilities District Number 88-1 and Community Facilities District Number 99-1.
Right.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you,
Or
President Roden. Director Denstead, you have a comment?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Going to do this one every single time this comes up. Legal counsel, this question is for you. I, in full disclosure, live in 99-1 under consideration. That is my permanent household and residence, and I want to make sure of my availability to be able to participate in the decision on this item.
Thank you, Director Denstedt. Under the Political Reform Act, there's an exception we call the public generally exception. And so that folks on a legislative body, such as this board, may vote and participate in matters that affect them if they are in the same position as the public generally. So because you are in the same position as every other member of CFD 991, you may participate. Thanks for asking.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Miller, do you want to introduce this
We're having a
item?
little chat
Are we
while
having,
while
are we
we're
having a
waiting.
sidebar over there? Okay, what did I do?
I'll turn it over to Mr. Aragon to
Okay.
update this one.
Yes, this item is an annual routine administrative item. It involves the recommended adoption of 2 resolutions related to 2 community facilities districts that are in the Murrieta area. What it does is it adopts the budget for each area, which is really just a spending plan. And really, the important part is that it's adopting what the property taxes will be, or the basis of the property taxes for each of those CFDs. The good news here is there is actually a decrease in the levy in the next year relating to a few minor factors, but the administrative expense. So about 1.5% decrease next year. And so ultimately, this is critical because these levies pay for the debt service that was promised to be paid from the bonds issued from the community facilities districts when the infrastructure was first built years and years ago. These CFDs, the debt on them will finally be paid off in October of 2030, so hopefully just a few more years of doing this and then they are done. But the recommendation is to adopt both resolutions.
I'll add that on one of the attachments, the date shows, on 2 of the attachments, the date shows on the 18th of this month, because that's when we're going to take it. We're taking it on the 4th. It's an attachment. We can change the date on that attachment. It's not part of the board's decision.
Is there a particular reason we're taking it early or just?
As you will discover on June 18th, that board meeting is very packed, so we were trying to move a couple of
More
items that were
agenda
non-controversial to tonight.
Okay.
It's a savings, it's lower.
Okay, so let me just make sure I'm clear. So that what you're saying is the resolution that's attached talks about the meeting on June 18th, but now we're actually,
It's the
we're
signature.
changing that to today.
It's just the signature block.
Yes, so
Yeah.
As the board secretary, I apologize for that error. We did not catch that when we moved that item forward. And we will ask you not to sign that tonight, and we will bring it back to the next board meeting for your signature.
But you can still take action tonight.
You may
Yeah.
still take
Okay.
action.
All right, I'm just making a note. Okay, any questions on this item?
So moved.
Oh, no, Director Densett has a question.
I have a question. Of course I have a question. This is for our CFO. Curiosity's sake, because, you know, I've been staring at these the whole time I've been on the board. First of all, decrease, happy about that. Second of all, glad that that date is coming into sight. So it's on the horizon, get that totally. Appreciate it. Not happy at all about this, totally understand it, know why it's there. Doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. However, I would like to know on this exhibit that you have on both of these items for 88-1 and for 99-1, what is this special taxed fund credit? I haven't ever seen that before. It's in red on the, for the 2000, what is that? And maybe I'm catching you off guard, and I apologize, because I just saw this, so for some reason, it did not stick in my brain when I look at it, the electronic, but it pops out on the page when it's in red in front of me.
It's a balancing number as we look at the expenses and the revenues. We're recognizing that we're lowering the expense for the next year. So there's a little bit of year-to-year reconciliation. So it's just what goes into the math for how we got to the 1.5% decrease.
Okay, and can we continue to expect to see it decrease?
I think it'll be relatively stable. There will be some dropping of expenses we expect in the next few years. Stable or something like this would be my expectation.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. All right, would anyone like to make a motion?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll make a motion to.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Ford, whenever you're ready.
Director Gardner.
Aye.
Director Torres.
Yes.
Director Dinstedt. Director Dinstedt.
You know, traditionally, I have voted this down year after year. I understand it. I understand that we've had a tremendous amount of things that have gone on down in the Marietta area. I understand that staff has taken a tremendous amount of pride in the last couple of years taking care of the Marietta division. I appreciate that this is, in fact, a decrease, and that the deadline for its being paid off and going away is approaching rapidly. And I'm going to shock the hell out of everybody and vote yes.
Director Rizvi.
Aye.
President Roten.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
All right, we'll move on to item C, approve an increase in the Well 7 capital project budget and increases in contract amounts for some of the vendors supporting the project.
All right, this went to the engineering committee. Derek Kwai is here to give us the details. Derek?
Great. Good evening, directors. I have the honor and pleasure of presenting the last action item for this evening. Normally, we wouldn't have tacked this on to a meeting that's in the evening and going late, but we have a very good reason for why we're doing this. This is for the Well 7 capital project. We're trying to develop additional local water supply. And we're using Proposition 84 grant funds for funding this project. However, the deadline for doing all the expenditures is July 31st, 2025, and staff is working, and all the contractors are working diligently to get the project done before that deadline and make sure all of those expenses are eligible. We have identified some additional costs that were primarily due to some City of Riverside requirements. And we're asking for an adjustment of the budget and approval of those additional costs, to pay for those additional costs. The action that we're requesting is to approve a $400,000 increase to the Well 7 capital project budget, increasing the total from $7.1 million to $7.5 million, and authorize increases to construction and engineering support contracts as outlined in the staff report. This is to cover the anticipated cost and to ensure full eligibility under Proposition 84 by the deadline of July 31st, 2025. And I open this up to any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
I have no questions, but I would move approval.
Okay, we have a motion.
So move.
Do we have a second? Director Torres?
I had moved approval, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
second.
Director Gardner made
My
a
bad.
motion. Would you like to be the second? Okay.
Yeah, I heard you. What is their motion?
Are we ready for the vote?
Yes.
Director Gardner,
Aye.
Director Torres,
Yes.
Director Dinstedt, Director Rizvi,
Aye.
President Roten.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, directors.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to reports. 8A, General Counsel Report.
Thank you, President Roden. Nothing to report.
All righty. And item B, General Manager and Staff Reports.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a couple of things. First of all, on the rate process, I want to thank our staff for all the hard work that they put on this. This was a heavy lift, and I'm just really, really proud of the amount of commitment that our staff had. And it goes across all the agents, the entire agency to do this. And I want to thank the board, because this was a lot of effort by the board too. To be involved, go to the community meetings, listen to the public, help us get through this process. So I just want to thank everyone for their effort. It was a heavy lift. Second item, our bill, Caballero's bill, SB 72, passed out of the Senate yesterday unanimously, 37-0. We're thrilled about that. Obviously, it now moves to the Assembly side. It'll start at Water Parks and Wildlife, go to appropriations, and then the Assembly floor. So that'll be happening in the next month. So we're thrilled about that. It was a good week. We got that. We also, as you heard, I have it on my list to announce a AAA rating, but everybody beat me to that. So we got AAA rating if you weren't paying
Check.
attention. What, on the dais, you have the report from S&P. And it's really a good read because it really goes into the details of why they gave us a credit increase. And this is not a good environment to be asking for an upgrade in credit. And so it's almost, to me, it is almost like a bonus credit from the rating agencies of how well we're doing. So, and a lot of that is due to the leadership of the board, and it is also due to the process that we went through tonight. And they asked a lot of questions about the board's ability to support rates to meet increasing costs and the stability of our operations and our financial future. So that was really important. It's late. I don't want to go into too much detail, so I'm just going to close by saying next week I'll be in DC with Director Rizvi, and we'll be looking for more money, and we'll be talking with our delegation about opportunities on the federal side. That concludes my
Okay.
report.
Oh my gosh, I lost my place. C, Director's comments and requests. Do we have any director comments? Director Torres? No? Director Risby?
I just want to thank staff, as everyone has said, as General Manager said, it was a very heavy lift regarding the rate, but this is something that you guys has made it easy for us to learn through this process. I learned a lot more about this process and how critical it is. And even a letter which we thought very simple today, came out to be very complicated. And it is because of our staff who made it possible for us to make these tough decisions for our community. So thank you all, and thank you for my board for being able to work together to be able to, help this community deliver, clean and safe water for not only today, but for our future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I ask you, Director Gardner, if you had any comments? Okay. And Director Denstedt?
Just a couple of quick comments. So for my colleagues, in case you were not aware, I was in Sacramento last week, and I was there on behalf of Metropolitan, and we took 9 meetings with state legislators last week to talk about the trailer bill for DCP. So now is the time for you to use a little bit of your skills to contact and reach out to our state legislative folks that if they have not signed on to any of the letters that are out there circulating, they need to be in support of this. And it's crunch time. So I would ask that if you have a direct relationship with some folks that have not yet signed on, I'm sure Craig, Sarah, somebody has a list of who that might be that we need to chase after. Now would be the time to do that. So appreciate your support in your efforts in doing that. Just as a reminder, General Assembly will be next Thursday, so looking forward to seeing all of you there. And I do have a request for a future agenda item, which I did bring up with General Manager before we started, and I'll bring it up here. The resolution is needed for the Aqua Region 9 Board, and that election is quickly approaching, and it needs to be done by June the 20th. So I, again, am seeking your support in my continued involvement with Aqua and Region 9 Board. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
No, we have to adopt a resolution. It goes down to go to Aqua. It goes then, they have a committee that designates the slate of the selection for all of the boards up and down the state, and it's for president and vice president for this, and all of that will be done prior to going to the next fall conference.
Directors, I will have that item on the the June 18th board agenda. It will go straight to the board because of the timing on this.
Okay, excellent. Okay, did I get everyone?
I know it's late.
I'm not used to night meetings. I remember going through the process of being appointed here. I'll keep this really short. And I was always used to meeting at night when I served on city council. And
You're over it, aren't you?
oh man, yeah, I am way over it because we used to meet till midnight sometimes. And now I'm like, it's 8:15? Okay, we have an information item, quarterly investment report. I do not have any additional comments. And our next meeting is Wednesday, June 18th at 9:30 a.m.